Good evening, everyone. I will call the Tuesday, January 28th, 2025 North Liberty City Council meeting to order. Tracy, could I have a roll call, please?
Leibold.
Here.
Park.
Here.
Sittig.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Wason.
Here. Thank you. Item 3 is approval of the agenda, and I don't see any changes to be made to that. Could I have a motion for approval, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Sittig, seconded by Wason. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4 is our consent agenda. Anything on there that you want to pull out and talk about separately? Otherwise, I'll have a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Smith, seconded by Sittig. Any questions? Motion, or could I have all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda carries. Item 5 is public comment. Now it's time for anyone in the audience wishing to make comments or address the council on an item that's not already otherwise on our agenda this evening. I'll open the public comment period. Seeing no public comment, I'll close the public comment period. Item 6 is our engineer's report, Josiah.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry to disappoint you. I really don't have much to update this month. Not a lot of projects going on, not a lot of construction. So unless there's any questions, I don't have any new updates for you all.
Does anyone have questions for Josiah? Want to make one up?
Give him the month off, Mayor.
Yeah, that sounds fine. Busy otherwise. Item 7 would be our city administrator report, and Ryan is ill this evening. He'll be joining us vocally here, but he does not have a report to offer to us. Item 8 is my report. I'm going to start with the proclamation that we have. I don't think we have anyone here to receive it tonight, but we'll get that to them as needed. Whereas Black History Month is a time to recognize and celebrate the rich heritage, achievements, and contributions of African Americans to our community, nation, and world, and whereas the history of Black Americans is integral to the fabric of our diverse society, and acknowledging their struggles, triumphs, and cultural impact is essential for fostering understanding, unity, and respect among all residents, and whereas this February 2025's theme is African Americans in Labor, with a focus on the various and profound ways that work of all kinds interacts with the collective experiences of Black Americans. And whereas North Liberty is committed to promoting belonging, accessibility, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion for all its residents, irrespective of race, color, or creed. And whereas we envision North Liberty to be a community where every person thrives, belongs, and is celebrated. And whereas this month provides an opportunity for reflection on the ongoing journey toward a more just and equitable society, and encourages dialogue on how we can work together to eliminate discrimination and foster an environment for acceptance and unity. And now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Chris Hoffman, Mayor of North Liberty, I would hereby proclaim the month of February as Black History Month. I call upon all residents, schools, businesses, and community organizations to join in recognizing and celebrating the achievements and contributions of Black Americans throughout history. A couple of items I've been up to over the last couple of weeks, really, to update you on. Last Friday, I'm part of our JEXA policy board, and it's North Liberty's turn to be the chairperson, so I'll be doing that this coming year. We also had an audit presentation from our auditor, so I'm well tuned into how this conversation may go tonight. We had a presentation, Tom Jones, the director of the JEC, had a presentation to Johnson County on the tax ask. Everything that the budget for the Joint Emergency Communication Center runs through the county. So that's something that he formally needs to do every year. And one thing that they did locally was work with our NL Fire Department here over the last couple of weeks to get microphones that were, how should we describe them? They were waterproof. So they had a defect, so they worked on that. Later that morning, on Friday as well, I was invited to participate in the Legislative Career Day at Kirkwood, and Representative Zabner out of the Iowa City area was there as well. I found it kind of intriguing that they would ask a volunteer legislator to be a part of a career day celebration, but it was actually a good conversation. There were about 14 high schoolers from the area, one from Liberty, one from Regina, one from City High. We had all three schools in Cedar Rapids, represented Jefferson, Kennedy, Washington, Xavier, and also a senior over at Belle Plaine High School. So they asked great questions, and my time was hopefully helpful in that. If you had a chance to go over to Fire and Ice over the weekend, Nick tells me that was the most widely attended one that they've had so far, and I liked how it was all spread out across the park, and it was pretty good weather for that. And then my last personal request for the five of you is just to keep continuing to be paying attention to what's going on nationally and with the potential impacts here locally. I've had a chance to talk to both Senator Walz here recently about what's happening in Iowa, and also have made a formal request through Greater Iowa City to our national delegation on a topic. So when you have questions, make sure that you're reaching out and asking them. And I would ask everybody, not just these five, but when you read headlines, read the article. Don't just stay there on the headline, because there's been what appears to be some alarming and darning things here over the last week. But the details have yet to be determined, so try your best to keep calm with them. That'll be it from me. I'll move on to council reports. Anything that you've all been up to on behalf of the city over the last couple of weeks. Yes, sir.
Well, I will vouch for Nick that Fire and Ice was a pretty cool event. I was there. I met some of the fire department and police department staff who were there, and then thank you to those folks, and then the Parks team that was there, and the rest of the city staff that helped do that. There was a lot of people having fun, and they had people on lines until they turned the lights off to do the fireworks. So.
That's awesome.
And it was a good show. So.
I'll say on that, I was in the parking lot, and the first people that I see leaving the event had to have been in their 80s comfortably. They were husband and wife, and I'm guessing they were there with their daughter, who would have been probably in her 60s. They looked exhausted. They had just had a great time. And as I'm leaving, another older couple was still arriving with their dog. And then there were kids in lines of kids to do bouncy house things. So that community event was really widely attended by all populations of our community. Anyone else? Anything else?
I don't really have anything to report. I appreciate you bringing up current events, Chris. And I hope we can all agree that regardless of what happens at the state and federal level, we're going to do our best to make sure our programs are funded. And we are going to commit to making sure our programs are open to everyone, regardless of who they are.
Yeah, thank you.
Just for me, from a national perspective, I did have an opportunity to meet with representative from Miller Meek's office just last week, and just had coffee. So just building relationships and keeping lines of communication open at that level. So I was thought that was a good meeting. I attended the legislative forum put on by Greater Iowa City. The topic this month was insurance in Iowa. And so there was a good representation of not only local legislators and local experts, but also a number of businesses and community members, association presidents, so on and so forth. So I attended the Fire and Ice this weekend as well. So again, I can't echo their comments any more than I already have. Just a tremendous event and tremendous staff that puts that on. So thank you for those efforts. And then finally, just a reminder for this weekend's events. I believe tickets still might be available for the Snuggie Crawl. You'd have to double check with Jillian or Nick on that, but another exciting event by North Liberty. So that's it for me.
I also attended the Greater IC Legislative Forum about insurance, and apparently Iowa's the new Florida when it comes to insurance and natural disasters, and there's actually some major providers that are leaving the market, which is a pretty scary thing, but that was definitely interesting. And also Fire and Ice, obviously, but I take the opportunity to thank the city slate sponsors, because that's what pays for those events, and without them, those events might not be happening. So I appreciate the city slate sponsors. Thanks.
You got it. Thank you, guys. We'll move on to item 10, then, which is our FY 2024 audit and presentation of the FY 2024. Dustin, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. I think this is year number 7, which is wild. Time flies when you're living your best life, I guess. So yeah, I'm here for the FY24 audit. I'm a senior audit manager with Bergen KDV. And if you have any questions while I'm doing my presentation, feel free to interrupt me. I have such a passion for city finance that if nobody stops me, I'll just kind of go through the whole presentation without taking a breath typically. Oh, beautiful. So the first couple of slides talk about the different reports that we issue. So the first one being the independent auditor's report, which is essentially what you pay us for, to come in, test, examine, issue an opinion on your financial statements. So we do give an unmodified opinion, which is the best we're allowed to give as your auditors. It provides assurance that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. And then the second bullet point is the Iowa Code of Compliance. And so the Office of the State Auditor gives us a series of checklists to complete regarding state statutes. And so we did have 2 immaterial findings of compliance related to that test work. So the first one being TIF balances not reconciling between city and county records and recommending that you work with the county to get those straightened out. And then the second one, disbursements in 2 functional areas exceeded budgeted amounts. So in Iowa, you are not only not allowed to exceed your total budget, you also have to be under budget in each individual function. So if you think of general government, public safety, public works. So 2 of those functional areas exceeded the budgeted amounts, even though in total you were still under your budget. And then we also issue a report related to government auditing standards. So because you're a city in Iowa, we are required to look a little bit closer at compliance with laws, contracts, grant agreements, and internal controls related to those. So we did have 2 findings related to that, to internal controls around those. At a material weakness level, which is the highest level finding that we give. So the first one being bank reconciliations, which is something you've seen from us from the last couple of years. We believe the city has it straightened out. It just didn't get straightened out until after year end. So we're stuck with this finding, hopefully just for this year. And then the second one being the lack of segregation of accounting duties related to the small number of office staff you have and not having enough hands in every one of those transactions.
I will ask you a question. If you can go back to the previous slide, and then we'll come back to this one. I should have stopped you earlier so that you could take a breath. The previous slide, please. The Iowa Code of Compliance 2 findings. Can you also update the public? Council's read it, but can you let everybody know what we've done as a city in response to those compliance findings?
The very first one, I believe that you're working with the county. I think there's a couple of TIF obligations that are one way on the city's books and another way on maybe the county's books. And I think you're working with the county to get those straightened out so that you mesh with each other. Okay. And then the second one, it's just part of it. Obviously, you set a budget, the year before and then you amend it. The latest you can amend it is in May. So if anything happens in June that you didn't anticipate, this is definitely our most common legal compliance finding that we give, because stuff happens.
Right, and that was the question I was just going to confirm, is that this wouldn't have been an issue had an amendment been signed off and filed from the city council. Is that right?
Yep. That's ultimately how you fix it, is amending your budget if you anticipate going over. But we have cities that amend, on May 31st, the last possible day they can do it, and they still go over because a random bill will come in June that you weren't anticipating, or construction will happen that you weren't completely anticipating.
Yep, so. Exactly. And then on the next slide, where you left off, the 2 findings and related to the bank reconciliations. And for everyone's understanding, that's a software that we have been trying to drudge through for the last 2 years, 3 years?
We started in 2020.
2020. Yeah. So we believe that is over. But that's what that was. And then the segregation of accounting duties is just simply nearly insurmountable task with the number of city staff we have here. Is that correct?
Yep, absolutely. I would say 95% of the cities that we work with receive that finding at some level from us.
All right, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. One more. Beautiful. So the next few slides look at your general fund. So overall, your cash balance in the general fund did increase by $741,000 to $12.2 million, which is the highest in the 5 years presented. Your fund balance policy calls for 25% of next year's budgeted revenues in unassigned fund balance, and at the end of the year, you were at 42.9%. So well within compliance of your policy. Next. On the receipt side, total receipts did decrease by about 159,000 or 1%. Your levy was up 350,000 related to an increase in the levy. Charges for services increased 176,000 related to some increased Parks and Rec programming. Licenses and permits increased 150,000 related to increased building activity. Uses of money and property increased related to getting better interest rates on your money in 2024. And then the decrease came in the other miscellaneous receipts, which is that tiny little green bar. Last year, you received a pretty significant developer contribution. That was kind of a one-time deal, and I think about $1 million. And so that was, that caused the green bar to be pretty significant last year, and then this year it went back down to normal, which is causing the overall decrease in receipts. Next. On the disbursement side, total disbursements decreased about 3.4% or 614,000. The reason for the overall decrease was your capital outlay disbursements. So again, the green bar, and that's the one that's going to fluctuate the most from year to year, was pretty significant last year because of some significant equipment purchases and some bigger capital projects out of the general fund. And this year that kind of went more to normal, but there isn't really a normal with your capital projects, right? Your general government disbursements increased related to some increased consulting costs. Part of that was with Forvis and getting the bank rec straightened out. So we expect to see those go back down next year. Community economic development disbursements decreased related to a housing rehab grant that ended. And then public safety disbursements increased related to annual cost of living adjustments and step increases for your folks. So next we look at the enterprise funds. So these are your water, sewer, and stormwater. These are designed to function a little bit differently. They're kind of designed to be run like a business. In theory, the amounts that they generate should cover their related expenses, their related capital costs, and their related debt costs. So we start first with the operating income, which doesn't include capital or debt costs. It's purely what it takes to run the department. And so all of these numbers look very fantastic, right? Because they were all very positive, and they've been very positive for the last 5 years. So your water operating income was just under $2 million, which is a slight decrease from last year. You did have some increased well cleaning costs and some increased fire hydrant purchases this year. Outside of this number, debt service costs of $1.2 million, capital project costs of $67,000. On the sewer side, operating income of $3.6 million, which is an increase from last year. You had some fire damage costs in 2023 and none in 2024. Outside of this number, debt service costs of $1.7 million, capital costs of about $400,000. On the stormwater side, which is the littlest bar, the brownish orangish bar, operating income was $74,000, which is an increase from last year, but overall pretty stable. So you almost have to take this slide with this next slide, which is your cash balance. So your operating income doesn't include capital stuff. It doesn't include debt stuff. But cash position obviously does. So cash balances of the water fund, pretty steady from year to year, related to positive fund operations. Sewer fund did increase its cash balance this year to an ending balance of about $8.6 million. And then stormwater stayed pretty consistent, decreasing about $2,000. 2 slides. That's me. That's how you get a hold of me. If the government finance, city finance is wild. And so if there's ever anything that I can do or explain or to make your life easier, I'm definitely here as a resource for you all. But I'll take any questions if you have them.
I just have one more question. And it's kind of an odd thing, not necessarily. It's just not something we talk about a whole lot. But can you help us understand what's going on with or our obligations when it comes to the pensions, to the IPERS program and those distributions? And I understand the policy was changed recently I shouldn't say recently, but at the state level here in the last couple of years to require cities to put in for pensions through the IPERS program a little bit more so than they have in the past. And 2 questions is we're doing what we're supposed to, but number 2, what effect does that have on our budget if you might be able to tread into that?
Sure. Just are you talking strictly about like the percentage contributions that the city is required to put in?
And the obligations that we have in the future for retirees and such. That model has changed, I believe, hasn't it? Sometime recently in the last maybe 5 years or so.
I guess I'm not sure as far as that goes, but basically the way it works is an actuarial firm for IPERS determines like what is it going to cost to pay all of our retirees the benefits that they're entitled to for the rest of their lives, right? And not only that, but all of our current people contributing, when they retire, what is it going to cost to pay them out essentially for the rest of their lives, right? So it's this giant billions of dollars liability number that IPERS essentially spits out, and then you being the city, based on your contributions as a percentage of all of the contributions in the state, take your piece of that.
Gotcha.
I think what you might be referring to is it hasn't always been in the audit, but it was a GASB rule in the recent past that requires that be included as a component of the city's audit. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think GASB 68 is the one she's referring to, and I think this is actually year number 10 of that one, because that was my very first standard I got to implement, and I've been around 10 years. Okay. So
yeah, this wasn't something I had seen in past audits, so there was something about it that I thought, but maybe I just wasn't paying attention as well as I was.
Yeah, if there was a specific place in the audit that you were looking, but yeah, it should have been.
Okay. Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah,
Are
absolutely.
there any other questions up here? Go ahead, Paul.
Mine was on, and I had asked this to Ryan, but there was a significant risk identified. It sounded like that might have been like a boilerplate, thing that's in your guys' reports there, but it was a management override of internal controls. Can you just elaborate on that?
Yeah, so that entire section, so we got an audit standard on our side a couple years ago, basically requiring that we start disclosing significant risks in the audit. And so I think there are 4 or 5 of them in your audit specifically, a couple of them related to estimates, but others related to revenue recognition, management override of controls, things like that. So what those are inherent risks. So those are risks that are in every single audit that we perform. It's not anything you can control. So that's what inherent risk means. Like you could have the best internal controls in the world, and there's still going to be a risk that someone who has super user access to your system could override all of those controls that you built and really do whatever they wanted. And so we're required to put that in there, but it is in every audit that we produce.
Thanks.
Good question. Anything else? Dustin, thanks again for coming down. And
Always.
going
Thank
through
you
this
for
with
having
us.
me.
Appreciate it. We'll move on to item number 11, which is our FY 2025-26. Oh, I guess I should probably move and finish item 10, shouldn't I? Item B, how about that, is resolution number 2025-13, and this is a resolution accepting the audit report for fiscal year 2024 as completed by Bergen KDV. Could I have a motion for consideration, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Siddick, seconded by Smith. Do you guys have any other questions?
Tracy, we know it's been a really long road, especially for you in the reconciliation. It was very frustrating as a counselor that we spent a lot of money on a brand new system to take away all of that, and we still had to spend more to make it right. But I appreciate all the work. I know all of the work, actually a fraction of the work that's gone in. But I've heard of all of the good work and stewardship that has been done in your office with your oversight. So we appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Well said. Anything else? Tracy, could we have a roll call, please?
Smith,
Aye.
Siddig,
Aye.
Leibold,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now, we'll move on to item 11, which is FY 2025-26 budget, and item A is review of operational budget. Ryan, how you doing there, buddy?
Sorry, doing well. Thank you. Would you like me to can I take it from here?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Apologies, I can't be there in person tonight, but you probably don't want me there in person at this point. Hoping to wrap up the FY26 budget this evening, and I believe there should be some department heads attendance as well this evening. I can't see the entire room on my screen. But I guess first and foremost, we've went through kind of scoured the operating budget one more time after our last meeting, and other than a small change in finding an error in just a calculation error in the police department budget that I think equated to less than right at $5,000. So we reduced that. Other than that, no other dollar amounts have changed in the operating budget. We updated the FY24 numbers with the most current audit numbers that Dustin just spoke about. So the model looks pretty good here. And unless there are issues or concerns folks want to talk through, we'll move into the social service contributions.
Sounds good, Ryan. Let's move on.
Okay. So we have a placeholder in the budget right now in social services for $175,000, I believe it is. You saw our requests from the social service agencies, which are equated to about $294,000, I believe is the number. This was a little different, as I noted I tried to note in the memo, and there was a question about this, and I hope I provided some accurate information or some helpful information. But this year, moving forward, we'll work with the United Way, just as the cities of Coralville and Iowa City do, and they will kind of be the folks who collect the applications for us and then provide us the document you saw. So we'll have a little bit of a heads up on what that request is before we approve a budget. And so that won't take away any authority of the city council in terms of deciding who gets funded or how much gets funded. What we're trying to do is kind of lessen the impact to the social service agencies so they're not having to work on 3 or 4 different separate applications. We think it's a good move and look forward to being part of that process. At the end of the day, though, the city council needs to determine what a number is that you'd like to include in this budget for when we evaluate those applications a little bit later this year. So with that being said, generally, Mayor, I think we're just asking for some guidance here. We have 175 plugged in. What do you want that number to be? And of course, that ultimately will impact the fund balance on the general fund summary page.
I'm going to turn it over to the 5 of you. Do you have any thoughts on the $175,000 placeholder that's in there right now?
Just a question, Ryan. I think I saw a net figure of $6,600. Is that about right in our budget?
Oh, in the yes, at the surplus for the year would be right at 6,600, correct?
Yep. Okay.
Ryan, I think you said that the request to us was $294,000, and that was for this 1 year. They're doing this can you help us understand what the new process is when it comes to, they're making 2-year requests, so they're not doing this on an annual, they're not doing this every year, but they're making these requests once every 2 years, but they're broken up into 2 different numbers. So the $294,000 represents the ask for this year?
That's correct. And Tracy actually was part of a group that was more intimately involved, so she could probably speak to it a little bit better than me. But here again, the idea is allowing trying to make the request side of things a little bit more streamlined and easier for the social service agencies. So it's not as if we just said we should do this for 2 years. There was some input from those groups as well.
Okay.
Along the way.
Okay.
So Tracy, so they fill out an application, is the application a 2-year application or one?
It's 2 years. So we want $100,000 in fiscal year 26 and $100,000 in fiscal year 27, or whatever those numbers are, for example.
So there would be no additional or new applications.
Next year, correct.
Next year.
The cycle, it's every 2 years. All of those organizations do every 2 years.
So then the funding of the organizations would be over a 2-year period.
At this point in time, we would be talking just about fiscal year 26.
Okay.
The application process, the applicants know that budgets change, things happen. So what they're granted in this fiscal year is not necessarily indicative of what they will be granted in the next fiscal year. Things can change.
But the
within those 2
list
years.
of applicants will remain the same.
Correct.
So we could go back next year, depending on what budgets do, and either increase or decrease, and then make adjustments to each one of the applicants in which we approve this
Correct.
year.
Correct.
Okay.
Or you could enter into a 2-year contract because our contracts do say council has the right to raise, lower, end that contract based on funding.
So what's interesting about this now is that we know what the funding request is by applications, which is not something that we've known in previous years.
Correct.
So we've always set a number in January and then find out what the actual request is April
Correct.
or May. So we're in a different spot. We don't know what those requests are specifically by entities, though, do we?
I do.
You do. Okay. Can knowing that 294,000, can you give us some perspective on what the asks have been in the past 2 years relative to what we've awarded? And just approximately, I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
I can say that they've always exceeded what was allocated for the funding.
Would I be out of line to say that last year's request might have been about 235,000?
About that amount.
Okay.
I think it was 237 is the number that's in my head.
Okay. So for some perspective, we allocated $170,000 before we knew what that number was. And I bring that up.
230, yeah.
Yeah, because we all went through this conversation with those nonprofits then back in June, and we knew what dollars we had to work with that we had budgeted for and what their requests are. So how did that feel? Did it feel like we did good for as many as we could? I felt honestly that there were probably a couple of requests that were really out of bounds. We couldn't fund something for $25,000, for example, aside from a program that we have well established like the pantry. But there was one of those in there, maybe two of them that really I think skewed that number. But I felt like the $170,000 that we had budgeted did fairly well in meeting the rest of the obligations. But what were your memories of that conversation?
Mayor, I just pulled up the spreadsheet, our scoring spreadsheet from last year.
Nice.
Just happen to have it on my computer, and I don't have the number right in front of me. But from an overall feeling standpoint, I was had my first time gone through it. I was very much. I felt confident in the effort that was put forth by the council to meet the needs where we could, and yet still be aware of, we have limitations from what we can fund for those things. So from an overall experience standpoint, yes, I think we made the right decisions for the right requests, and still keeping an eye on, we can't, unfortunately, our hands are tied. The requests are always going to be larger than we have funds available. I mean, there's just no getting around that. From an overall experience standpoint, I thought it was great.
Thank you.
I'd agree with that.
Okay.
I thought the number we landed on was well thought out.
I think I agree, Mayor. I think there are also other things that we have done and probably will do in the future in partnering with, with capital campaigns and such with places like the pantry. We had I think we were more focused on North Liberty centric this last round. I know I was specifically, and not that we don't want to fund and help partners close to us, because we have and we will. But I just felt like last year we were more, focused North Liberty bound, which I liked. So the 175, I think, makes sense to me for this year.
Okay, and that's ultimately what I'm getting at. Yeah. You feel that way too, Brian? Okay, Eric?
Yeah, I just have one more question, I guess. With a $6,600 balance, ending balance, well, for this year at least, we would have to cut somewhere to raise more than $6,600 in this budget. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we can't raise our general fund
Correct.
levy anymore. So, I mean, I could see adding, $5,000 of that 6,600, but also I don't like the idea of I don't like the idea of being at $6,600, honestly, to begin with, as a net budget amount that we have left over. So I think I'm in favor of 175.
My concern is next year, we may not have 175, and if we got a bunch of people that, like, hey, this is what we did last year, it may skew their kind of budgeting process too. So I'd rather, I guess, be a little more conservative this year and then see how things go next year for them.
And Mayor, I think to Tracy's point, and I know that all of our partners will know this because they're going to hear all of the cities saying the same things about our anxiety of what may come with reductions from the state, with revenues and such. But I think it will be important for our municipalities to very openly communicate that with our social service partners, because they do look ahead, and just like us, they have to forecast and budget. And if they are counting on that money, and we have to make hard decisions, I just want our partners ready for such.
I think they've been feeling that way for the last week.
Yeah, the question on the 175, I think, is aligned with the demonstration that we've had consistently, at least from a percentage standpoint, and I'm supportive of that, because when you look at where we're at, yes, we are demonstrating commitment, and it seems to be in line, even though we know there could be difficult conversations in the future. So I'm supportive of the 175.
Okay. I think I'm pretty well hearing consensus on that then. Okay. So Ryan, we're good on that number.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
We'll move forward with that. Let's jump into capital projects, and we have a handful of them to talk about tonight. And I've asked a few of our department heads to be here to help us talk through with them. So I'm just going to help us talk through them for the potential for this budget year. I am sorry, just bringing this up here. So let's start at the community center. We have 3 projects we're looking at, and I'll give a brief overview, and then if you have some additional questions for Shelley, we can talk about it. The first 2 are indoor pool-related maintenance projects. Excuse me, I apologize. The first one is indoor pool-related, and it's those acoustical baffle panels that you've probably seen falling one by one. That are in need of some help. The second one is an outdoor pool issue that we believe can't be ignored and needs some improvement here soon, some caulking and repainting. And then the third project is one that we've had numerous conversations on already, and that's the parking lot. And I've provided a diagram in your packet to show how impactful this project would be. But not only does it improve the parking area, it significantly improves parking or pedestrian access to the building. Many things that we require developers to do on new builds, we're trying to get in place here, because when we built this, 25 years ago, those types of regulations weren't around then. So I'll stop there. If you have, one other comment, two of these projects, the first 2 The acoustical baffles in the outdoor pool repair would be funded with cash on hand. The parking lot we would need to borrow money for, and that is shown in the model as well, and how that would impact the future tax rates. This particular project is minimal in terms of impact when you look at other big projects, but it would have a small impact to the tax rate. I'll stop there and let you pepper Shelley with some questions.
Do you guys have any questions for Shelley?
I do. So I know the indoor pool was closed for weeks in the spring last year. The outdoor pool, I think, was closed down at times because of the water was cloudy. Is that right? Last year. And I know we've done a lot of work to some of those systems. I'm just curious about the age of the rest of the infrastructure there and what we see coming up that we may need to do.
Yeah, and you'll see that, on the 5-year plan.
Right.
The pumps are key ones. We've had link seals in the past. The wall, actually, we made those repairs. Guy and his team made some initial repairs of the wall with his specialty. I'd let him explain what it actually was, but he's corrected some of those wall cracks that we've had in the past. But it's just to the point now that we need the professionals in there and taking care of a multiple number of cracks is what is proposed there.
Sure.
So yes, we're 20 plus years old now, the pools are. So we are that point where we have filters, pumps, you name it, go down. And the indoor pool, that operations goes 24/7. So.
And as far as the outdoor pool goes, are we fairly confident that we figured out what the issue was with the water?
Not clearly, no. Okay. It's something that Ashley manages every day. We still see it as increase in baler load takes place. We have ruled out, to my knowledge, that it's not paint related. So again, it's something that is unknown, and we've had a lot of people take a look at it, and we're still going to continue to have people come in as we see it happening.
Sure. Okay.
Is it just a filtration issue? It's being introduced by sunscreen.
It could be filters. It could be, that's, again, another thing down the list that we need to look at is, are those 5 sand filters needing redone? So we're trying to figure those out, if it's pump related, filter related, and yeah, those decisions are going to be, we'll see how, if it gets worse, then yeah, I would say that would be a filter problem.
So Shelley, Ryan mentioned an access issue with the parking lots and sidewalks. To me, and again, back to the unknowns, sidewalks and a parking lot project to me seems like a nice to have if we have the money to do it. What kind of access issues are you hearing from people that are trying to access the community center that we're currently having problems with? Are we having ADA compliancy issues with access points, or what's the access issue?
That would be for definitely the west and the east sides, which we're proposed at phase 1. Some of that is ADA related. We're having an issue actually from the trail side up to so that would be the east side of the building, from the trail up to the building. That you'll see that in those plans, is trying to have a trail connection up that way. Mm-hmm. On that east side of the building is also the road, I guess you would call it a road or path along that east side. Wasn't fully done at the time that we put it in. That is now an access where we do pool chemical deliveries, and then people using the downstairs Jardine entrance. That's where a lot of people unload and stuff, so we're making improvements on that side. So a lot of it is on both the east and the west side. On the west side, the library entrance, we've had problems of water collecting right at the main entrance of the library. And so that sidewalk work right where a drain is sloping stuff more away from the building at that entrance. So some of it is, yes, ADA, but that is why east and west sides of the parking lot are phase one because of those issues.
And we're calling it parking lot because that's a big chunk of it, but really it's a lot more than that.
Yes, it is parking lot along with. On the west side, you'll see in the plan as well is we are a constant pass-through on that west side. And I know Jenny is concerned with how traffic and just with patrons coming from the west side parking spaces. As cars are zooming in, we put some speed tables in the proposal. So some of that has increased the cost of why we're taking those avenues to help accessibility to the facility.
And if I could just add a little bit, we kind of talked through a couple of problems, and as Shelley mentioned, it was cut through traffic, and the easy answer is let's put some speed humps in there. I know we have temporary ones. I'm not a fan of them. And recently with the Pizza Ranch and the Palestra, we did the raised sidewalks for pedestrian access. And so we started talking to Shive Hattery about, okay, maybe those are an option of raising up and creating a pedestrian connection. And Shive came with the good idea of increasing pedestrian access to that facility as well. So really trying to solve the problem and to be quite honest, make it a pain for people that come through, slow them down. Because if people are zipping through there and you're backing out, it's a real dangerous situation. And we also wanted to increase connectivity over to the ranch house. If you go through the back there's not any way to connect really to that. And so part of it was to create a series of islands so that when you came in, it wasn't this quick, speed right into the facility. And we were able to kind of design, I should say Shive, a way of pedestrian connecting to these islands, get out to the public sidewalk, which naturally gets you over to the ranch house. We have one pedestrian connection next to the pool. We didn't have one to that north side, so it was a really good opportunity for a connection. And then we have zero for Community Drive. And I'll vouch for the one I know I've talked to Guy in the past about people coming up from the trail. I think he was out there one time and thought about it one time, deleting it, and then realized how many people were actually coming up. If you come up the trail right now, it's just kind of this weird, like you're not quite sure where to go, and you got to take this left to get in there. So obviously, I'm a huge proponent of pedestrian connections, but if we could kill a couple of birds with one stone and slow people down, that's great.
Those speed tables, will they make plowing snow more difficult?
No, they're just kind of ramped up like this, and then they have a flat area that allow for drainage. That just creates a clear path for pedestrians to walk, so plows can come right up over them and then right down.
And I do appreciate the additional sidewalk from Cherry Street to the north. I think that's really will be a great addition, especially for people going to the library. Things like that.
And it's closest to the Cherry Street Tunnel too, so you come up right from that tunnel and it's right there.
Any other questions for Shelley? Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on then. Well, I'll take that as we're okay, including these projects in the budget. We'll move on to fire. And obviously there's a big ticket item here, and it really is serving as more of a placeholder for tonight. We will have a dedicated conversation with the city council when we get a report back in from Shive Hattery. Excuse me, which we anticipate. We actually have some drafts in, and we're going back and forth with them. But we'll have a conversation with you folks in February, most likely, to determine how we want to proceed. That's a big, intimidating number there. So we are definitely going to have to spend some time talking about that. For tonight, though, I believe Captain Humpston's in the audience. And if there are any questions about the high angle and confined space equipment, I believe she'd be able to to address those, and we're proposing to use fire capital money. You might recall we now get just over $36,000 a year from the university for their hospital being located in North Liberty. We get that annually from them, so we're proposing to use a portion of those funds to fund this piece of or these pieces of equipment here. And I would turn it over to Captain Humpston if she's there.
She certainly is. I think Chief Kakani feels left out that he didn't get asked up to the. No, he's shaking his head.
I'm sorry, Chief.
That's okay. He's fine right where he is. Tell us about this. What are you hoping to do here with these?
So, as you know, the city has a confined space rescue team for when the city public works does confined space entries. However, as with all the new growth and Steinler Clinic, the new hospital, there are likely additional confined space operations going on in the city, and we need to be prepared to handle any emergencies there with confined space as well as high angle. A lot of the equipment is interoperable, the harnesses, the ropes, some of the anchor systems, but some of it we would need to add to our list of equipment.
Okay.
Could you just explain high angle a little bit more?
Yes. So high angle rescue, a simple example would be the window washers for the new hospital. Either their harness fails or their anchor fails or they have a medical emergency and they're either stuck up there and need to come down or need to be rescued, pulled back up and taken down in through the facility. So that's kind of in a nutshell. Construction is also an issue where you'd have high angle, members up on scaffolding, the tower cranes, things like that.
So what type of equipment do you use for that?
We have special harnesses and special ropes and then different anchor systems that serve as kind of your safety and your backup safety, your backup to your backup. The ability to lower a rescuer down the side of the building, connect into the window washer that's having issues, and then either haul both of them back up or lower both of them back down to the ground. If a person has a traumatic injury, like a head injury or a broken leg or something, they might need to be put on a special basket and either lowered or raised to safety. Does that explain that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And how do you train for these things?
Well,
Around here at our facility or?
actually, yes, we are able to train at our facility, the one that's made out of Connex boxes. We have different sides of the building that we can access with the ladder truck, and also high point anchors to use for training, like rappelling down the side of the building. The hospital, I believe, has high point anchors built into it that the fire marshal was a part of when we designed it. So our training area would have anchors that kind of match that. Otherwise, the state of Iowa Fire Service Training Bureau, they have a semi that they come and tip up, and it becomes a 4-story training building. Or also Iowa City Fire Department Training Center has similar props because they have a special operations team. So we would probably do a lot of training hand in hand with them.
So Tata, with that, are you looking at matching size of ropes, whether it's larger diameter, 11 millimeter with Iowa City, so that all of your systems will be interconnected for 2080 agreements if you respond in with them or they come here?
As best we can, yeah. Because we would probably be purchasing equipment a little bit sooner than maybe Solon Fire Department or a different fire department as they're ramping up their special operations. We would try to match it as best as we can.
What's been the discussion at the county mutual aid association? Are there other departments like Solon that are looking to branch out and do some additional things?
I'm not sure about some of the high angle and confined space. I know Solon recently received a grant for a new boat. So kind of water, ice rescue related, so some of those other technical rescue disciplines. They also do, Solon has a new rescue truck with a lot of really nice equipment on it, and some of it includes heavy extrication equipment. So within the mutual aid agreement, we're trying to kind of match what other departments are doing so that we can be helpful to them. They also have the grain bin rescue equipment, similar to what we have, but Solon doesn't have an aerial. So if they were to have a grain bin rescue and they needed a high point anchor, they are calling us for our aerial. So we have done some training with them on the ropes.
It was a great explanation. Thank you.
Yeah, Iowa City was in the hospital by my unit a year or so on a construction thing where a guy fell between two construction areas.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those low frequency, high risk event type things.
Thank you. Ryan, the only question I have for you is the Cherry Street Firehouse number that we're putting in here it's a placeholder, obviously. So we're not married to this number. We're not trying to commit us to this, but it's thought provoking more than anything at this point, right?
Yeah, and I debated and even including it just simply because we haven't had the conversation yet. So it is probably premature to have it in there, but I wanted to get people thinking about it and know that, this is a project that we're gonna really have to evaluate here in the coming weeks. So to your original question, yeah, it's really just a placeholder at this point. I didn't mean to glance over it.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that. So we won't go into much detail on that one. I think it's yet to be determined.
Ryan, is your goal, I know across some of the departments, you've had folks that have been trained with confined space, at least self-rescue. Is that going to go away? Are you going to continue to have other departments like streets that are going to stay confined space, rescue trained, and work with the fire department as a joint team, or you're going to turn this whole thing over to fire for rescue?
Well, that's something both Brian and I have been visiting, Chief Plotz and I have been visiting about, and I think ultimately the goal would be the FD is the one who is handling it. But certainly with some of the confined space entries we have at wastewater, I'm thinking in particular, they're going to have some sort of, foot in the game here. So I guess if I could say more information to come on that, Brent, but the idea here was really to get it focused at the fire department level.
Any other questions about fire department? Seeing none, Ryan, we'll move on to parks, please.
Okay, we have a pretty lengthy list here for parks. I'll just note that the Quail Ridge projects, what you're seeing here is we're trying to come into a park and in the Quail Ridge perspective here and get all the projects done. And so we don't have to come back in there again for a few years. But the Quail Ridge projects, the LED lighting at the pickleball courts are all funded, proposed to be funded with franchise fees. And then the Fox Valley Pond and Trail and Drainage project is part of a bigger decommissioning of that Fox Valley lift station project. So the project cost is actually more than $160, but a part of that will be paid for by wastewater when we decommission that lift station. And then we have a couple other trail projects on here that we thought were prudent to get done in the coming year based on what's happening. And for example, the Forever Green Road trail would be connected to the university project. And so we thought it made sense to have pedestrian access there. And then the Penn Street trail is right across the street from the new food pantry and thought it would be good to have that cleaned up as well. Excuse me. And so I know guys there tonight, Josiah and Russ, have worked on some of these projects with Guy as well. And we would, I guess, entertain questions or concerns about these projects. Excuse me.
I appreciate getting into Quail Ridge and doing it all at the same time, sort of disruptions in there. And these are all, that's a great park, and that's an oftentimes overlooked park in the city. So having those improvements will be fantastic. I don't really have any thing I have an issue with any of these projects in the parks side.
Mayor, I'll just piggyback on Quail Ridge. I believe this comes from a multi-year conversation with me to you and Ryan, with input from a lot of users of our baseball fields specifically, and having that being in that network, a variety of baseball clubs, a variety of softball clubs as well, and the amount of use that our ball fields see, and really needing that additional 90-foot base path ball field and the fencing and things out there in the park. So I appreciate that. It's been a long conversation, and turning some attention to Quail Ridge, I'm appreciative of for that feedback from constituents that I've heard. So thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.
So the trail around that would be all around it?
Yes. It'd be connecting, finish connecting the sidewalks that come in from the housing areas. We have part of it done, but we just want to finish that off. It'd be on the back side, I guess it'd be the west side of the baseball field there. So
the field improvements, is it leveling out the outfield, putting fence in?
yes.
Okay.
Yep, correct. So there'll have to be a few trees that will have to be removed. We're going to level out some of the outfield and outfield fence. That totally complete that field.
My question was on Penn Meadows, the lighting out there for the pickleball courts. Was that, I see that's going to be on demand.
Yes.
So is that like a free thing? They're just going to hit the button and the lights come on?
So to kind of give you some back history, the tennis court went in 2006. We had a 20-year service agreement with Musco. So they take care of, that was the part of the cellular and everything. So you could actually turn it on remotely if you need to. But since pickleball has kind of arrived, it's been a huge chore turning those on every night. I mean, yes, we could program them to be on regardless, but then you have a week straight full of rain events. So we thought it'd be a little more beneficial to add in the on-demand button. Of course, you can still program it to where certain times of the year, or you can't. That button will not activate after 10 p.m., for example, or it won't turn on during the day. So we can program it that way. But yes, it'll be more on-demand for users.
Because before, people were plugging quarters in.
That's one option, but most people don't like that. So they've learned if they email me or contact me in the evening by my cell phone, yes, we get them turned on that way too.
Will those, presumably they're going to be set to go off after a certain amount of time or at a certain time?
Right. We'll program them so the park closes at 10 p.m. So the lights would shut off shortly after that.
And the LED ones, would those just come on automatically and not like the last ones would charge? And
Right. So we have high pressure metal sodiums right now. So they're just like your old gymnasium lights. If you turn them off after they've been on a while, it takes 30 minutes before they'll turn back on. So that's always been a problem. They shut off and I get a call like, why aren't these lights turning back on? And it's like, you have to let them cool down. So going to LED, there is a considerable amount of energy savings. It goes from probably about $14 an hour down to about $4 an hour in energy cost savings. So there's a huge difference there. But with the new system, we will get another 20-year service contract where if anything goes wrong at all, they'll be there to fix it. Comes along with the service contract as far as the cellular part of it too.
it's mind-blowing how much people use that pickleball court.
Yeah.
And I would look forward to you having some evenings to yourself.
Part of the job. But, we thought this would be an opportune time to do this just because our 20-year is just right coming up in 2026 to get ahead of that, where I wouldn't have to renew a contract with them. We just go right into a new one with a new system.
I think there'd be a lot of happy people that this is happening. So.
Has there been discussions of is there a rewiring that's going to have to occur, or it's just going to be light poles? Because if it's rewiring, could there be some pre-positioning for possible future lighting to Owen Skelly Field during the phase?
They're reusing, all they're doing is putting new lamps up.
Okay.
And then they'll have to put a new control unit in with the wiring for the on-demand user push buttons.
Okay.
Yep. It would be separate from that, which, we'll probably talk about that project down the road, but that would be a whole standalone system.
Okay.
Back to Quail Ridge, sorry to go back there. You mentioned that there would be a couple of trees that have to come out. Are we going to replace those somewhere in the park?
Depends on the health. I'd have to go out there and do an evaluation on the health of those particular trees. If it's decent, I'll probably just hire someone to come out and transplant them with a tree spade just back further in the same park. Okay. If you don't have to travel with them, maybe you're just relocating them within a couple 100 feet, it doesn't cost as much.
Any other questions for Guy? Thank you, sir.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, we'll move forward with those projects. Thanks, folks. Lastly, we have two significant street projects on the docket here. The first one is North Stewart Street, and this has been in our CIP and has been pushed back a couple of times, mainly because we're trying to pay for this with cash on hand through the street repair program. We're at a point where we can do that this year, and we believe make a significant improvement to a residential neighborhood just south of Penn Street. The second project you're all well familiar with. In fact, we have another agreement on the agenda and a design proposal on the agenda tonight for the roundabout at Jasper and West Forever Green Road. I believe Michael's in the audience. If you had any questions on specifically North Stewart Street, if you have questions on the Forever Green Road roundabout project, it's probably a conglomeration of us, including myself and Josiah and Michael, but would open it up for any questions on these two projects.
That went well. Poor guy. Hi, Michael.
Hello.
Can you tell us about Stewart Street?
Yes.
First of all.
So we're talking North Stewart Street, south of Penn Street, north of Cherry Street. So two major arterials in between there. It's part of the kind of the matrix, the old part of town. Sees a lot of traffic because of the connecting points. And we're looking to upgrade, obviously, the street curb and gutter, street itself, sidewalks, and really improve the drainage of that area. A lot of water flow goes through there, and it's just a subpar and has seen better days.
Will the road be able to be widened in any way as a result of this? The driveways for folks are kind of right along this, not the driveways, but they can park there. They do their best that they can. They're kind of up against their yards. What will the width of that road look like when it's done? If you have can use another road for a comparison, will they be able to park on both sides, for example?
So that's a great question. I don't necessarily have an answer yet because we'll have to do a study of what's what we have to acquire or not acquire. There's sidewalks are close in that area.
Yeah,
it's going to be. I would say fun engineering, but I'm not doing the engineering on it, so
that's why it's fun to you.
I think I don't know is a good answer right now, but I mean,
and I apologize. I might have gotten too far ahead of us in that. So,
but I would say being through there a lot, the way the condition of that road is on the edges, falling in and stuff. I mean, even if we have what seems like a narrow road compared to some streets, the fact that it's curb and gutter and straight is going to functionally improve just the width of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I won't go on about that one. How accurate is this roundabout depiction in what we see for designs? In what you think this might look like, Josiah?
I think it's pretty close.
Okay.
Yeah. There's going to be some changes around the edges and maybe the function, but the basic geometry is close.
I would say our set points are there, right? Our roads to the northeast, south are set. So, you know, the functionality is those set points are there. So we don't have a lot of wiggle room to move around. I actually did see right before I came here tonight, they had a news article on Channel 9 about it, talking with Corville too about it.
Yeah, and in our regular packet, seeing the phasing of how this construction goes, because that's going to be a difficult haul maneuver to get traffic flowing through there. That was nice to see too. I don't have any real concerns with either of these projects or questions about them. Do you guys?
Just a quick one on the center of that roundabout. Is that more landscaping? And can you remind me who is tasked with maintaining that?
Us.
Are we?
Yep.
Good.
I think that's a great opportunity for we talk about city beautification and trying to make North Liberty a unique place, and that's just an entryway right into our city. So great opportunity.
Spoken like a real planner. Yeah.
If I could just make a note on that to Paul's question, we offered an opportunity for the other two cities to participate in some sort of annual maintenance agreement if they wanted to say in the how we construct this. We didn't get any response back, so it's our opinion, and how we're moving forward is it's going to be designed the way we want it to be designed, and then of course we'll take over the maintenance of it. But if that should change, then we would have some sort of maintenance agreement where they would chip in as well.
And maintenance agreements for roadways and such can change over time, and that's done pretty commonly through 2080 agreements. We're going to maintain this section road or this roundabout, thus and such. Those are things that can be changed after the fact later.
Well, rest assured, it will be beautiful.
It'll be a huge improvement for sure.
Any other questions for Michael? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, I think, Mayor, that wraps up what we need from a budget conversation to move forward in completing the state forms. We'll start doing that, and then Tracy will get public hearing notices out, and then those will start coming back in front of the city council. So we have now until April 30th, believe it or not, to approve the budget, but based on the timelines of publications and hearings, that's about what we need to make this happen. So at this point, I think we have what we need, unless there are any more questions or comments, and I appreciate everyone's input and discussion into this process.
Are there any other questions? Ryan, I think we're all hoping that you can get back to bed, and thanks for joining us here tonight. Thanks for what you're doing here.
Thank you. I am gonna dodge off, so I appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all at a later time.
Sounds good. Thanks for joining us. Item 12 is the accessory dwelling units, and item A is a discussion regarding those accessory dwelling units here in North Liberty. Thanks for sitting through this so far, Jeff. I look out at you there. You don't get to have a night like this very often. So the conversation we had a couple of months ago was intended to really just make this part of an ordinance change that we were contemplating then. And at the time, it was there was a lot more that we could have heard about, which is why Jeff and William are joining us again tonight, and also an opportunity for us to really have a little bit more of a conversation rather than this is what we would like to do point of view on that. So our intent tonight is just to understand what this may look like in the city. and opportunities that the two of you may see, and that's why you're here to help us out. But also, Russ, I'd like to have you help us understand how this might look in the city, what it isn't going to look like in the city, and help set the stage on there. And I think it would be fair to say that you really don't have skin in the game on this one. This was an idea that these gentlemen and then this organization brought to you, and he's just here as a conduit to have this conversation tonight. So with that, I'm going to let you take it from here, Russ.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we've been very serious tonight, so I started, some planning humor up there, and I've been a lot of planning conferences, and when the jokes about ADUs come out, buckle up. It's going to be a wild night. So,
oh my God,
I figured we'd start with that. Just a couple of examples of accessory dwelling units. They can be detached. You can have an addition. It can be in your basement. It's really just a separate unit on your lot. So it can take many different forms and look like different things. You may not even notice it's there at all. It's difficult to see, but I did put kind of what we had proposed in the previous version, and I think you've all been around. I'm no stranger to zoning code amendments, and it's usually reflective of things that I'm seeing as we go through daily practice or things that people are asking me to do. So we talked with the folks, with Jeff and William quite a bit over a couple of years, and just decided to add it. With the way the zoning ordinance was reconstructed a couple of years ago, it's really easy to make regulations specific to accessory dwelling units. So we can make it as expansive or as limited really as we want. So we can control the use and design standards, with the exception of exterior cladding, which was a recent amendment in the Iowa State Code. So we are limited on that, but we can talk about different things like height, roof slopes, window fenestration and things, and building orientation and size, and a bunch of other things if you want. We can also just say, well, it's limited to the existing home or anything like that. So a lot of options out there should you choose. I think we'd probably all agree this looks really, really nice, and we'd be like, wow, that would be great. And I think some people have a vision of this is what accessory dwelling units look like. But you could also go on Amazon and get one for like 20 grand. Which is a little terrifying because we have no idea if it meets any of the building codes that we have, and flat roofs and things like that may be questionable. Certainly, a second story ADU overlooking someone's yard could be compatibility issues. I would note it was one of the items that we discussed with William and Jeff as we kind of proceeded here. Is certainly as we add design requirements to this, we add costs. And that could affect affordability. So these are things that we kind of talked about and we're concerned about. Again, a really small slide, but I just wanted to kind of point out, I did reach out to our friends over at Johnson County and Iowa City who have accessory dwelling unit ordinances and just kind of get an idea of how many they had. It's not a lot. And I kind of did a comparison too of what those two ordinances look like compared to what we were proposing in the past. I could count on one hand, probably not with all 5 fingers, of how many times people have asked me for accessory dwelling units in the city. And I think that's probably what the mayor meant by, skin in the game. It's just not something that's asked for a lot. Now, certainly you could make the argument that perhaps it's a barrier that there are no allowances in the city for it, and perhaps that's why people didn't move forward with it. Or it could just be a barrier that's just not a big need in our community. We really wouldn't know unless we went out and really did a lot of polling with people, and we just didn't have the resources to do that. I guess I'll lastly end on, similar to the setback reduction we did at the north end of the city with a building permit in error through a PAD. If somebody really wanted to come in and have an accessory dwelling unit, they could request a PAD and go through the rezoning process. Obviously, that would be discretionary for you to approve. So it's just not an outright, or somebody could come in with a subdivision. I think the peninsula down in Iowa City has been something we've talked about. That option would be available to developer from a planning standpoint. Obviously, that would be exciting. Just haven't seen, a lot of people tend to go on the old reliable, like people like front-loaded garages and things, and people are buying that. So that seems to be the easy one. There's wonderful examples out there of what we call neo-traditional development, where they have rear-loaded garages and things. I've been to a couple of them. I'd love to see one here. But those tools are available. We just have to go through a little bit more of a process. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Now, William, I understand that you have some more thoughts on the slides that we have here that you have presented to us. And so I'm going to just kind of turn it back over to you here a little bit on what your some of the points about these slides and what an ADU is and what it's not. And I'll turn that over to you here for a few minutes.
I'm just trying to unmute. Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine. Yeah. Well, and I realize that Jeff's been sitting here patiently in the audience too. He may be able to say what you're about to say as well. So I'll let the two of you, I guess, take that on.
Okay. I have a head cold too, so it may be a little hard to hopefully understand. And Jeff is physically present with you. I cannot see the slides, so I only see you. So it's hard for me to know everything you've had up there. But I think it's been mentioned that an ADU can be attached or detached. It could be a basement. It could be in an attic. It could be a converted garage. It could be above a garage, or it could be a new freestanding residence. I think what's really important is that an ADU is a permanent dwelling on a foundation. The ADU, and you should make sure it's in your ADU code, that it does have to meet your building code. So it has to meet your electrical, plumbing, heating, air conditioning, and sewer requirements. So it should not be anything you're afraid of. It should be as structurally sound as single-family residences and as safe as single-family residences. It should have a separate entrance. The city, you would attach a separate address for the ADU. So that's really critical, because I understand the comment about you can find things online for $20,000, but that $20,000 structure that was mentioned is not going to, I'm sure it's not going to meet your building code. So therefore, there is plenty of assurance that it's a safe and structurally sound environment. And you should just make sure your code says that it has to meet code. However, on the positive side, the ADU is smaller in size. If you look across the country, it might be as small as 500 square feet, might go up to 1,500 square feet, but it's smaller than most rentals are. So therefore, it's less expensive to build, to heat, to cool, and to maintain. And that's why it's attractive. We know there is a huge need for more housing. There's a sizable need for more affordable housing. And there certainly is a significant lack of housing in what I would call that sweet spot of 800 to about 1,300 square feet. And this is where the ADU comes in. If you look back at data, way back in 1950, for a family of 4, 2 adults, 2 children, the average size of a house was 983 square feet. In 2020, the average size for that same 4 household was 2,261 square feet. So you've seen the increase of size. Sure, that's a lot is based on demand and what people need, but it significantly has increased the cost. And because of cost, single adults, couples, families, and seniors, they can't afford those larger environments. So people are becoming more willing to live, excuse me, in smaller residences. Johnson County has allowed ADUs for many years, And last year, they revised their code to make it even more accommodating to ADUs. Your Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously recommended a draft code to you, and we believe it's a conservative draft code that includes owner occupancy. ADUs, we agree, are not a panacea. You're not going to see a huge number of people come forward immediately. A lot of that is just people knowing that it's possible and for them to learn about it. But it is a reasonable option that gives homeowners, your homeowners, choice, particularly across their lifespan. And what I mean by lifespan is needs change over time. So when you ask people that want to or have created an ADU, these are the reasons they say they have done so. First, to provide a home for a loved one in need of care. 2, to provide housing for relatives or friends. 3, to have space for guests. 4, to create a place for a caregiver to stay. 5, to increase the value of their home. 6, to feel safer by having someone living nearby. And last but not least, to earn extra income from renting to a tenant. So there's a lot of different reasons for them, and they can change over the lifespan of the homeowner. Now, last year, when we presented, we didn't have a chance to react to, we heard one concern raised and then a second inference of a concern. So I just want to quickly address that. One concern that I heard was about affordability, and I think it was tied to assessed valuation. Excuse me. There's no doubt if a homeowner adds an ADU to their property, certainly their assessed evaluation would go up and their property taxes would increase. No doubt about it. But they would have done that intentionally. But when we're talking about affordability, we're talking about there is a new dwelling created that did not exist before. And that is where the affordability comes in, that smaller environment provides a residence for a single person, a couple, or a small family. And so that's what we believe is the affordability issue. The second, we heard a reference, but we didn't hear the specific issue about perhaps fire safety. Again, I tried to address that right up front, that the ADU has to meet your building code, just like a single family residence. It will have a separate address that you will assign. Your fire department would know that. So therefore, and quite honestly, as we looked across the country, we have not heard that is an issue. Probably the 2 biggest issues that we've heard around the country are owner occupancy, which is the fear that if both units, the primary residence and the ADU were rented, there in some communities is concerned that the lot's there's gonna be problems with the lot, that there's not gonna be oversight of the lot. But your draft contains owner occupancy, so that you can take care of that issue. The other issue is parking. And in some towns and some cities, they require an off-street parking slot for the ADU. The current draft does not include that. That certainly adds cost to the homeowner to create, additional concrete pad to create additional parking space. If you felt it was to make you more comfortable, to allow ADUs, add that in. I mean, that's an option that you could consider. But those have been the 2 major concerns across the country about ADUs. But we think that when people have approved them slowly, there'll be requests for them. Generally, they've been very well accepted across the country.
Thank you, William. Jeff, what else is missing here? And can you introduce yourself to those of us that don't know you?
Sure. I'm Jeff Kellbach. I'm an aging specialist with Johnson County Social Services. I'm also a staff liaison with our Johnson County Livable Community for Successful Aging. William is our housing action team chairperson underneath that Johnson County Livable Community for Successful Aging. I'm also a North Liberty resident. I think Bill really more eloquently, aside from his cold, kind of hit all the issues that I was really going to nail, except for maybe just a couple of things. And I apologize, Bill, you may have hit this, so I may just be hammering home a point then.
That's fine.
The other thing that we wanted to address too with the property value, obviously we know that will go up as Bill said, but it is the lot. You already own that lot, so you're building on that same lot. There's not that extra expense. It's the expense of just the building itself, which can be sizable depending on the size of it, the design involved with it. But overall, it's the idea that there's flexibility for that homeowner. One of the big things that's always talked about is, potentially the homeowner living there is in a bigger home, right? As the family grows up, they're getting older, they may need a smaller area, but selling that home, moving into something else may just not be the best thing. Maybe having that accessory dwelling unit that's smaller meets their needs, potentially a spouse's needs, but then having the family move into the home. Maybe it's a son, daughter, or it's just simply the ability to rent out the house, which, when you're talking about, fixed income as somebody who's retired, that can be a big deal, to be able to have sizable, income coming in from that house. Because obviously when we're talking about properties, we know that rent is going to be going up as well. So that means that's one variable for somebody who is going to be on a fixed income. They own that property. They could make quite a bit of money off of that rental then that allow them to stay in the home potentially for the rest of their life. So I don't have anything else to add, but I'm happy. William and I are both happy to answer any questions, and I can get out of the way too in case there's anybody else who wants to come up here.
No, I think you are it. So you can stand comfortably there for a while. As I said, this is we saw an ordinance draft. We don't have it on the agenda tonight. This is really an opportunity to ask questions of William and Jeff. So with that, I wanted to kick this back to you guys. What questions do you have of them? Recommendations, suggestions to staff on what an ordinance might look like, and we'll bring that back if this is something that we want to pursue in a future meeting. So if anyone has questions, feel free to pepper these two or staff here as well.
I've got a question for Russ. Just the owner-occupied requirement in the ordinance that we looked at, the owner can live in either of the units, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
So Mayor, I guess I'm a little confused. Are we asking questions? Are we having conversation about concerns? Are you locked into bringing it to an agenda where we should just hold conversation until a vote comes? I guess I'm not clear on what the action is here.
Great question. I just want to have some conversation on the questions that we have so that Jeff and William are here to answer it, as well as staff. I'm not locked into anything. It's really on if this is something that we want to pursue, because this was an agenda item that Russ had put into a large number of ordinances at the end of last year. So I think it was your request to pull this out. So I want to give it the time and attention that it needs. But right now I don't have a particular destination in mind. It's just a matter of getting there with the folks that we have in the room. So fire away.
Okay, so I guess back to a few points, and I appreciate both of you being here. William, I think I heard you may not even be anywhere close to North Liberty right now, so to sit through this evening and take time away from your family, we certainly are appreciative of your time here tonight. So as far as polling, and Russ, you talked about polling, we couldn't go out and poll the folks in the community. Certainly not scientific polling, but that's kind of what we're here for. We're here representing those that elected us to be up here. So again, not scientific, but I have reached out and I have asked questions and asked folks about ADUs and tried to educate them with the information that you guys made available with the AARP packet that you provided the last time. I asked neighbors. I asked past city council member. I talked with a current realtor that's in this market to ask those questions about what ADUs might look like and the purpose behind why we might entertain them in North Liberty. The majority of what I heard from constituents, neighbors, was that might be kind of nice. That might be a nice option for me to be able to have for a lot of people connected with the mother-in-law suite. You know, the majority of folks, that rings better than an ADU. They're like, well, what's an ADU? The mother-in-law suite is what I think most of us understand it to possibly be. But on the flip side, they didn't want their neighbor to have one. It would be nice if I personally could build one for various reasons, but I do not want to look out my back window and see one that my neighbor has built, which is contradictory. HOAs, I believe, are a huge issue with ADUs. The majority of HOAs here in town will not allow them. I think we would likely set up what could be additional lawsuits between homeowners and HOAs, because a lot of the times folks don't understand the full HOA compliancy issues or what their covenants are, and they just start down the road of building something, and then they get hung up with their HOA, and then it has to go to court. The HOAs, a few of them also have no parking on the street rules, which again, William, thank you for addressing that. When you talk about adding dwellings, there has to be parking spaces, and so that would certainly be something that city staff is going to have to look at, again, to try to limit that with HOAs. On the fire department side, and William, I appreciate you picking up on that for me last time. I do have some experience with these on the fire side from where I work, and the city that I work for does allow ADUs. I have a big concern, especially with not necessarily detached ADUs, especially when they're in the back. There are setbacks in the cities for a reason. There are street access, there's fire apparatus access requirements, there's hydrant access requirements for reasons of access for fire department, reach of fire hose, access, between lots trying to get to an ADU that may be in the back, limits and slows down the response of what it might be, because most of these aren't going to have an alleyway or something that's going to be quickly accessible by the fire department. The garage ones are a huge issue. I've been part of 2 fatalities in ADU garage fires, okay? Garages that have been renovated into ADUs, that is not something fire personnel are looking for. And depending on what the design standards are, if the garage changes into a dwelling unit and the outside surface it doesn't change, or there's no way to look at the outside of the building and understand that there are people living or sleeping in that area of the home, it doesn't get a primary search first, like bedrooms and living areas do. Okay, so that's a learning curve for the fire department. Rental properties. Another concern I have would be rental properties. Now, this is solved by the owner-occupied piece, but the ADUs being built to be Airbnbs. That's another thing that neighbors don't want to see. They don't want people from out of town that they don't know accessing ADUs, because it's an access issue, right? You're going to be walking between homes to get to ADUs that stand alone, typically either on a side yard or a back access. Renting those out on a weekend for Airbnb and just having people come and going all the time, around your property is a concern. So those, Mayor, are kind of the top issues, and I really appreciate these 2 coming back, because we talked about a few of those things and a few of my concerns. And I just wanted to air those tonight. So I appreciate the time, Mayor.
I appreciate you bringing those up, Brent. Between the 3 of you, would you be able to address Councilor Smith's questions? And I tried to write some notes here, but fire access, not knowing someone's in the building, that they're responding to because they're in an ADU. Does that it has to have its own separate address help in that way, Jeff? Or
I would hope that that would be something that would certainly help with that. I don't know if there's additional things that would need to be done to make sure that the fire department is aware of this property. This is what we have going on here. I don't know how practical that is, but I think that there could be something set in there that's a requirement if it's going to be built, that this is the type of ADU that it is, and that if it's flagged as that property is on fire, well, that means it's this property, not the main house.
Right.
Now, obviously, this is going to be something. If it's an attached, it's like, okay, well, where's the entrance to that when you're rushing out to a place? But certainly, if there's knowledge that this is attached, that means there's a separate entrance. We're not going through the main house. I hope that would help with decreasing the chance of fatality and destruction to the property.
So on that note, Russ, is that something, and we've got 2 firefighters here, is that built into your programming when you are responding, what kind of a unit you might be responding to? I don't mean to throw you 2 into this conversation, but would a fire department know? Could that be programmed? Maybe it just wasn't in one jurisdiction, but is it a possibility in another?
It can be programmed into the notes of the Johnson County Emergency Communications Center, and it would come up on the MDC.
Okay.
But again, not all of our rigs have MDCs.
Okay.
I would say we would be in favor of some kind of notification ahead of time if a unit like this were built, and definitely some major signage pointing us to the address or the proper entrance.
Okay. And so, Russ, do you think those might be addressed inside of an ordinance, or what's the way to?
I think it'd be a policy,
that?
and I wouldn't anticipate we'd have so many of these that they'd be unmanageable. So it'd just be a communication issue with our fire department. We have obviously Fire Marshal Harden is somebody we interact with quite a bit. So I wouldn't see communication being an issue, especially with an organization like ours.
So Russ, that would be something, a standalone ADU in the back, so separate from the home. Is that something that's going to have an inspection by the Fire Marshal's division, or is that not necessary?
To be honest, I don't know. I would suspect it'd be like a regular building permit where they wouldn't.
And then internals for sure not.
Yeah.
If you're taking your existing home and you're now separating and breaking it into 2 separate living spaces, there's not going to be that level of interaction or.
Yep.
Unless there's a rental permit involved, right? We have inspections for rentals.
Okay.
Yeah.
But by the building department.
Yeah.
Yep.
As far as in Councilor Smith's example, as far as an ADU being a separate structure in the back of the property, if there were space for it, building codes for that structure being constructed, do they contemplate access for a fire department, or is it only in certain circumstances?
I think it could, right? I think we could write design standards so that they could. I would say by and large, the majority of our homes in the city are centered on the lot, and depending on how big your lot is, you may have a wider side yard, or you may not. I mean, some of what we're seeing now is 5-foot side yards. So you may not.
Yeah.
So it's pulling fire hose from the street where the access to the hydrant and the water supply is, through the side yard, through landscaping, over fencing, and you see where I'm going. The access to the back, especially on a standalone, is much different than what the design standards are and the setbacks are for a reason, which is get off the rig, pull a line, and be able to make that front door with a 200-foot pre-connect hose to go in and effect a rescue. That's not going to occur on a back standalone ADU. So that's one argument on the standalone. The other is the ability to read that structure from the outside and understand what you're going into. If you pull up to my house right now, they know they're going into a ranch-style single-family residential wood frame structure, and they get in there, and they don't know that I have split and build an ADU off the garage and made the garage into a living space, that's what I'm talking about. They can't tell that from the outside when we are going in and we are retrofitting the existing structure and building out an ADU in the basement or the garage. They're going to go search the bedrooms, the living areas first. They're not going to the garage. So
And that's why I questioned whether or not a separate address would be of help as a note for a responding department. Thank you for being here, by the way. And also if, notes on structures that would have an ADU attached or inside of them could be attached to responding notes, whether it's coming from the dispatchers or just in our planning department, so that you have that note when you're leaving the station. I don't know if that's, again, I think what we're trying to do is to come up with some policy. We're trying to craft some things that are of concern, but also to meet what is likely to be a somewhat limited request. So not to throw a blanket over the entire thing to snuff it out, but are these objections, can they be overcome, or can they be written in policy?
Well, I think, to be honest, in the planning world, I'm not thinking of the fire rescue component, which is legitimate. Certainly, I would argue, you could have a detached garage in the backyard at that same setback, but obviously there may not be a life safety component to that, right? If it burns and it burns down, and you're not having to enter that building and check for lives, which I get. That's a legitimate concern. This isn't a new concept. Many communities throughout the United States have done it. I'm confident we would have ample communication with our fire department to notify them of the layout, but certainly it could be a challenge.
But to that point, honestly, Mayor,
could I just, 1 second, Bill? Councilor Smith had a question, another point here.
not to dominate time, but this is to the point. When we look at Johnson County and Iowa City and even Cedar Rapids that have them, they don't have many of them. And so I think we're solving a problem that we don't have.
They don't have any what?
They don't have many ADUs.
Right. Okay.
So, being a smaller community, the need or their want for ADUs, I think, is minimal. From what I have heard in my small sample size, of course. But I just think it's we're solving something and we're creating additional issues that I don't think we need to. And with that, I'll.
Okay, and I think what I would say is that there could be a need. I don't know how much of a demand there will be for this, but if we can come up with something that meets the legitimate concerns for fire safety and access, that we can do this. Time will tell whether or not it takes off and becomes adopted. So that's really what I'm hoping to do, and that's why I'm grateful for your question, for your comments, and for your suggestions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
In regards to the fire stuff, and those are good points. If there's a detached, garage, is that like the policy? If it's not a structure that someone's living in, but that's the only thing that catches fire, is that, do you just let that burn?
No.
You would put it out. And so I guess
Correct.
My point is, as far as a fire hose go, that would be the same, if there was a dwelling back there or a detached garage that caught fire, one way or the other, the fire is going to get put out.
Correct. It will get put out, and there will be a search made. But I think, like Councilor Smith mentioned, it would be the urgency of that primary search and whether or not someone in there is probable versus possible. There's a lot of times it's possible, but not probable. I can assure you we do have areas in the town now where people are using garages as living spaces, unpermitted.
Mr. Mayor, may I interject?
Please do.
So, Mayor and Council, the question was raised earlier about Airbnbs, and I
had that note too. So
I wanted to just sound off on that briefly. So the state Iowa is something called home rule, which means we can do anything that the state legislature says, except for things that they say we can't do. And one of the things that the state legislature has done is restrict local government's ability to regulate what they call short-term rentals. And so that includes Airbnb type stuff. So with the code is section that is, let's see, city shall not adopt or enforce any regulation, restriction, or other ordinance concerning relating to short-term rental properties, except for regulations that apply generally for the protection of public health and safety related to fire and building safety, sanitation, or traffic control. So they're generally, you can't touch short-term rentals. We can't require licenses or permits for those things. So Airbnbs everywhere in Iowa, that's what our state legislature says, you can just do it. But we do get to have some control over how those are built, that they need to make certain NFPA standards or whatever for the fire code. We can implement those requirements for any structure that people are living in, even if they are Airbnb. So I wanted to make that one thing as an option, or as just clear legally. And then just as a general comment, I would say that some of the, and council is aware of this, but some of the choices you have to make are going to be trade-offs. There are some things that are more convenient but less safe. That we could all be driving cars with bulletproof windows, for example. That could be something that we could legislate that every car should have bulletproof windows. But the cost of doing so would be prohibitive, right? And for the amount of safety you get. So there's the council. The challenge here is in weighing the public need versus the cost for doing so. And so I think, Councilor Smith, you're right on the right track for trying to identify the issues and figure out where that dial needs to be set. Mm-hmm. And reasonable people can disagree on where that should be. So those are my two things, Council.
Thank you.
I just have one other quick comment, was in regards to, and it looks like Wayne might have something to say also, but in regards to, a lot of our neighborhoods will have covenants that won't allow this, and as far as like it becoming a lawsuit, issue, for one, I would encourage, if this moves forward, that would be the first thing a person should do, would be to check their covenants and check with their HOA to make sure that this could be done. Or would it also be possible, if there was an application to be filled out, that we could add that to help them avoid any situation like that? Yeah. Like say, hey, before you do this, make sure it's okay.
Chickens.
Just like we do with chickens.
Yeah, we do the same things. We will not, issuing a permit doesn't violate any existing property rights. If you have an easement or some other property right or a covenant that affects your property, whether we issue a permit or not doesn't undo that, right? We're not taking away anyone's private property rights. And so we make that clear. We do that when we issue a fence permit. We do that when we issue permits for urban chickens. So that's part of our standard process. Is that fair? Mm-hmm. Yeah. We can't make those decisions for everybody, but some neighborhoods want to have these restrictions, others might not, and that's up to them to do that. And I think Mr. Rusneck's description of this was providing it as a tool in the toolbox, not a cure-all, but something that's available for those that want it. And not everybody's going to want it.
Good explanation. William, I'll come back to you there. Thanks for your patience. You had a point to make a couple minutes ago.
Oh, just, excuse me, just a couple separate items based on the questions. I think the separate address is absolutely key in thinking about the fire safety. And the city would assign that. So I presume your internal communications would take care of that they would know there is the potential for a person to be in that, either that separate detached environment or the basement ADU or an addition to the house. They would know that. Second, homeowners associations. It's absolutely true that this code, if you went ahead and had an EDU code, it would not be applicable to homeowners associations. So that isn't an issue. I mean, if somebody lives in a homeowner association and wants to build an EDU, they got to go to their homeowners association and get them to put it into their covenants to allow it. But if the covenants don't allow it, this code for North Liberty would not supersede that. So that is not an issue. Also, it's more of an observation. I know Cedar Rapids, even though there hasn't been many ADUs created so far, they are actually encouraging ADUs to be created because Cedar Rapids has a significant lack of housing for their workers in their plants. And so they've actually done some marketing of ADUs. They did a design contest, and they continue to encourage the development of ADUs. So I think it's something that's coming. It's not going to be fast or quick. I think it's very manageable. And I don't see it as a problem. I see it as an opportunity for you to be giving your homeowners an option that they could take advantage of. And then you do look to your policy to make sure you're comfortable with the issues of size, setbacks, and safety concerns.
I think that you're welcome. Thank you for those final comments. I think that kind of summarizes how I'm trying to approach this. It's something that will evolve. How much time did we spend on chickens years ago? And the number of folks that have taken it up and do it, it's relatively small, but it was important. So it was something that we worked with and created. And I think there's probably an opportunity to create something that not only might be of help in some places, but it is something that will evolve, something that we can look to continue to mold and modify, possibly, as time goes on. I don't want to make this meeting any longer than what we already have, and thank you for stepping up here. Do you guys have any other questions that would help enhance this conversation?
I don't have any questions. I think just more comments, and again, just to extend, positions and opinions of this group, I think are important. But to Brent's earlier point on the need in the community, we hear from a council or a staff perspective on everything from community members, whether it be, hey, there's weeds on the street, we need an updated swimming pool, we need, my street needs to be repaired, or why is my snow plowed? Or why has my street been plowed because of the snow? What I haven't heard, and I don't know, can't speak for the rest of the council, is that there's a need for this. And I'm not saying that there's not an opportunity to do better for seniors, for our community, but I was just looking at some of the data represented here within the study, because I did some additional research into what was provided with the packet. And just as an example, the population of the cities cited within the AARP study, right? Denver, Colorado, 2.9 million people. Houston, Texas, 2.3 million people. Tucson, Arizona, 548,000 people. The closest one referenced in the study was Annapolis, Maryland, which is landlocked and has really no place to go. We don't have those issues here. We don't have that population. We're a population of 21,000 as of the 2024 census, right? So from a need perspective, I haven't heard it. I don't see it yet. It might be the demand is small at this time. I am concerned about unintended consequences over the course of 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, which we haven't yet addressed with some of these. We specifically just talked solely about fire to this point. So I don't want to take up any more of anybody else's time. Just some things that I've started researching because of this topic I think is important, and it does set the stage. I am for affordable housing. I am for representing our seniors. I am for property rights, different things like that. However, we have to take an intentional approach because the decision we make today is going to impact not only our generation, but generations to come. And getting this right will be important, whether it's now or a year from now or 5 years from now. It's kind of just my opinion. So thank you.
No, I think that's well said. And I think we could put a lot of pressure on ourselves to get it right and to get it perfect, or we could start in some place that people may respond to, and we just don't know the answers to that. So I think, William, his last thing is that this might just be an opportunity. Whether or not people want it or not, I don't know if we'll truly know until it's a possibility. So you had something, right?
Yeah, just two questions. So if without this ordinance the way it is now, is there a mechanism where I could do this?
No. The only caveat I would say is, like, for instance, I have a basement downstairs where the kids live, and I'm not sure quite what's going on down there, to be honest with you. As long, you could have a second kitchen down there, as long as internal access to the unit is maintained, and I have sliding glass door in the back, that could essentially operate like another living unit because we can't regulate what a family is in the state of Iowa. It's when you block off that access and make it a completely separate unit, have an exterior entrance, and possibly start giving it separate utilities is where it becomes. But no, not unless you had like duplex RD zoning or something like that.
Could you rezone?
Yes, you could. Again, you could ask for RD zoning to do a duplex. You could ask for, if you had single family zoning, you could ask for a PAD. If you wanted to move forward with an ordinance like this for ADUs, you could do it severely limited and say you could do ADUs within an existing footprint of a house, that it didn't change the existing footprint. There's just a menu of options available.
Right. So if somebody like a developer came in though and they want to develop a certain section of an area, they could plan for this.
Yes, like I said,
And then just do it as a PAD.
You could do it just like the peninsula. We could absolutely do that.
So, which may be a good place to start overall. So.
And I think that's a great example of starting someplace. And maybe we just don't allow detached. Maybe we start with attached. I don't, for some of these concerns, and whether or not that's even an option, but it is. It's a starting point for how this may evolve as a starting point in there.
Can I just real quickly? We know there's a dire need for affordable housing in our community. We know that this is not going to meet all of that need, but it might be something that meets some of it. And I think we should. I am confident in our staff and our community that we can come up with something that will work. And I think we should continue to talk about this and look at that ordinance again at some point that was proposed before. It may not be needed, quote unquote needed. I don't think allowing side-by-sides on city streets was needed. Right. So I think there are a lot of things that we do that aren't really needed. But this is something that can help some people, and I think we should look at it.
I don't disagree. What I am concerned about is the inverse effect in this regard. And I don't know that this happened. I haven't researched enough yet, but I have started reading some articles, and the thought process potentially of, for example, a developer coming in saying, you know what, I'm going to buy those 4 houses, put an ADU on it, and then now, you know what, the rental rate in North Liberty is X amount of dollars, and I'm going to charge X plus a certain percentage for that rental rate, and it actually has an impact that negatively impacts what we're trying to accomplish with what you just commented on with affordable housing. I think it could potentially spike the opposite as opposed to increasing supply. You've now just, which would in theory reduce the rate or the rental rate. I think you now have just said, you know what, we're excluding because you can't afford to necessarily buy this because of whatever situation you're in. As an example, I'm not saying that's happened. I can't cite any sources yet. I've just started researching this particular piece, and there was an article I read. It said ADUs tend to benefit wealthier, low and medium income owners can't afford to build an ADU and or don't have the knowledge to navigate the complicated design and permitting processes, which we're starting about. And this is from Shelter House, Essential Reporting on Affordable Housing. And this is a quote from in there. So navigate the complicated design and permitting processes are either priced out of building one or sometimes to decide to sell their home in face of changing neighborhood demographics, as an example. And the article goes on both positives and negatives against ADUs. But what I'm saying is that there are 2 sides to every coin.
I appreciate that. And I think this is going to need to be an ongoing conversation. So the research that you're doing, Brian, if you can pass along some notes to Russ, I think we're going to be funneling this information to you to see if this is something that we can use or approach and ultimately if we can talk about it some more.
And if I could just add one more piece, I do get totally that this is one tool in the toolkit. I also think that you as a city council have done things differently since I've been here to allow better housing options, right? I think we've allowed more dense projects than we've seen in the past. Relaxing the zoning code to allow multifamily and commercial where you had to go through PADs. Now we're starting to see multifamily and more density in those areas. Those are tools in the housing toolkit as well. So, I don't look at North Liberty as a barrier, assuming nothing happens with this, that no, we just want, one type of housing and that's it. And it's clearly not the case because I think you guys have made adjustments and gone along with some of the adjustments that I recommended, and I appreciate that.
So if it's okay, I'm going to try to bring this conversation a little bit to an end, but with homework. If you have further comments and questions, please direct them to Russ. And Russ, please solicit in places where you don't have an answer, that you're looking for some guidance from us.
Yeah, and specifically, I would say streets, fire, PD for sure. Like we don't want to put them on the spot here, but I want them to have those conversations, privately with you, so you get their view of what they have and the hurdles that they would see with these. Not just taking it from me, because I don't work in this community. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to item 13, which is CDBG CV. Food Pantry Grant, and item A is public hearing regarding the status of funding activities. I'll open the public hearing. Yeah, I'll give you an opportunity just to catch us up here, and thanks for sticking around.
Sure. I'm Tom Gross. I'm a planner at the East Central Iowa Council of Governments, and I'm doing the grant administration for the Food Pantry project, which is to help them purchase fresh food. The purpose for the hearing is that when we get to submitting our second claim, that'll push us over 50% of the grants expended, or grant funds expended. And it's required that we have this status of funded activities hearing completed before they will do the reimbursement for that request. It's a little bit rote. I did work to kind of shorten this up on my past templates, so hopefully that helps. Shouldn't take too long. So as required for this hearing, it's noted that for general description of accomplishments to date, the food pantry has purchased fresh food, including meat, milk, and produce. And they've received delivery of those items already, so they're being put to use. And then for a summary of expenditures to date, through January 15th, 2025, a total of $42,657 has been invoiced and will be submitted tomorrow for grant reimbursement. This expenditure included $38,907 for food purchases and $3,750 for grant administration. And the expenditures are 100% supported by the grant. And there are $57,343 remaining in grant funds. For a general description of remaining work, additional fresh food purchases up to $51,093 will be made, and that will include additional procurements of meat, dairy, and produce. And then one thing the pantry hasn't been able to get due to supply constraints is eggs. But if there's a change in the availability of those, they'd like to try to get those in the future. And then for a general description of changes made to the project budget, performance targets, activity schedules, project scope, location, objectives, or beneficiaries. The budget is currently the same level as proposed in the grant application. The project application proposed an end date of July 2025. It'll actually probably take us till the end of this year or early 2026 to expend all the funds. But that shouldn't be hard at the rate we're going, and will certainly be before the end of the award, which is April 2026. And then the objectives and beneficiaries remain the same. So, and then if there's any comment from the public, I'll take note of that. So, or try to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you for that update, Tom. Appreciate that. You have any questions about this update?
I was going to ask if the freeze on federal funding was going to affect this. I understand that freeze has been blocked judicially, but I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
I haven't gotten any updates. It's so new. I haven't gotten any updates from IEDA yet. So I'm just proceeding under normal operations until I hear that it is. I did see that the Federal Office of Management did include the CDBG programs on the list of programs that need to be reviewed by agencies. I believe with the deadline of March 15th. So there might be some possibilities. It was all appropriate under the CARES Act. So I don't know what the administrative branch or executive branch options would have to like end the program, but all I can do is operate kind of how I normally would until I get more information more direction from HUD and IEDA to do otherwise.
Well said. Any other questions for Tom? Thanks for sticking out this marathon.
Thank you.
Meeting here. I'll move on to item 14, which is Johnson County Mutual Aid Agreement. And item A is resolution number 2025-14, a resolution approving a 2080 agreement for automatic and mutual aid fire protection, rescue, and emergency medical services between the city of North Liberty and certain other cities and independent fire districts in and around Johnson County, Iowa. Could I have a motion for consideration, please?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Siddiq, seconded by Wason. Do you guys have any questions? I guess maybe could either of you just let us know what was updated specifically? Brian Heyer said this is just an old agreement that's just being modernized, but what may be modernized in this language?
It's an agreement that hasn't been really updated in 10 years. Okay. So Chief Plotz has been the architect of the update, and it's been 2.5 years meeting with all the cities and fire departments and kind of getting them to use some common verbiage. We did some updates on detailed dispatch procedures, which included updating the mapping resources technologies as part of that. They had a line item shared training requirement and costs. They updated the liability protection and ensures that member agencies have internal agreements in place. It again specifies that trained personnel will respond jointly to these mutual aid agreements when there's a fire. Command responses are unified and using, again, the same verbiage. So those are kind of the updates over the last 10 years. Also getting some of the names correct on the agreement that have been outdated. Every city and county attorneys and fire chiefs have gone through it, and now we're just asking for the formal approval and signatures.
Awesome. How often should this be updated?
Probably every 5 years.
Every 5 years, okay.
You know, it's something getting people together, and it is a monumental task. Basically, Chief Plotz did a draft, and then each fire chief took it to their city, and they commented, and then he came back and kind of compiled that, and it went back out again, and little tweaks that people wanted for different reasons, but it was a fairly labor-intense process on his part.
Sounds like it. Thank you. Are there any questions for Chief Kakani? Awesome. Thank you, too, for sticking this marathon meeting out. Are there any other questions? Tracy, could I have a roll call, please?
Wason?
Aye.
Leibold?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Park?
Aye.
Siddiq?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item 15 is Forever Green Road and Jasper Avenue Roundabout. Item A is resolution number 2025-15, and this is a resolution authorizing the execution of a settlement agreement between the cities of North Liberty, Tiffin, and Coralville, Clint Rarick, and the Ruth E. Rarick Trust. Could I have a motion for consideration, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Parks, seconded by Wason. Are there any questions?
Sign it.
What's that?
Thank you. Paul, go ahead.
Do we know if Corville?
Yes. I don't know if Coralville has. I know everyone else has. It's on their agenda for tonight. And their attorney is, everyone I have talked to says this is going to get approved. So
Tonight's the deadline, basically, for it to be done. So, anything else? Tracy, could I have a roll call, please?
Leibold?
Aye.
Siddiq?
Abstain due to conflict.
Park?
Aye.
Smith?
Aye.
Wason?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. And item B is resolution number 2025-16, a resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement for engineering design services between the City of North Liberty and Shive Hattery, Inc. Could I have a motion for consideration?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Smith, seconded by Wason. Love seeing this plan on paper.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. The previous resolution passed 4-0. If you abstain due to a conflict of interest, it's not a negative vote.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this agreement?
I didn't ask this before, but I think I can vote on this one.
You sure can.
Tracy, we have roll call, please.
Wason,
Aye.
Sittig,
Aye.
Leibold,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 16 is assessment resolution, and this is resolution number 2025-17, a resolution assessing an amount owed to the City of North Liberty, Iowa to individual property taxes. Could I have a motion for consideration?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Sittig, seconded by Smith. Any questions on this? Tracy, roll call, please.
Wason,
Aye.
Leibold,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Sittig,
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 17 is zoning ordinance, and this is our second consideration of ordinance number 2025-01, an ordinance amending Chapter 168 of the North Liberty Code of Ordinances pertaining to residential district dimensional standards. Could I have a motion for this consideration, please?
So moved.
Second.
By Park, seconded by Sittig. Any questions? Tracy, roll call, please.
Wason,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Sittig,
Aye.
Leibold,
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Motion carries. And item 18 is Greenbelt Trail Part 8 rezoning, and this is also a second consideration. This is of ordinance number 2025-02, an ordinance amending the zoning map district designation for certain property located in North Liberty, Iowa from ID Interim Development District to RS6 Single Unit Residence District. Could I have a motion for consideration?
So moved.
By Park,
Second.
seconded by Smith. Any questions? Tracy, roll call, please.
Smith,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Leibold,
Aye.
Sittig.
Item 19, old business. You have something to add?
Oh, just to clarify with the ADU conversation, is this been going to Ryan to work on new language for that we're gonna talk to, or open it up for another discussion for another day?
For right now, I want some questions to be filtered through Russ on what you'd like to see in that ordinance.
Okay.
If you'd like to see it in that ordinance. Any other old business? Okay.
Quick new business. Is that all right?
Let's go on to new business. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I just had a request, if possible, if people that are watching the live stream, if we're sharing slides on the TV, if that could be somehow shared with the public also, so they could see kind of what we were talking about.
You must have had a note from home live during the meeting.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And then I've mentioned this before, and I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but in the interest of, like recruitment, when we're talking about some of the high angle training, and we have this, cool facility for fire training, if we can at some point open that up to the public if they wanted to watch some of the training happening far away. I don't know.
I'll craft a waiver for you.
But I just remember as a kid going to some Army stuff like that, and it made an impact on me. And I think, there's some kids that could watch, someone rappel down a building and rappel back up or save someone's life. I think that'd be a pretty cool experience. So
That's a great point.
if anyone can handle it, Grant,
thanks.
you can.
The repelling or the
repel? I'd rather. Can I just repel instead of write the release?
We know where your strengths lie.
Mayor, a couple of new business items for me. Again, just a reminder, our Better Together 2030 Bravo Awards are Thursday. I know many of you will be there. Certainly will not ruin any surprises, but I will say that there will be some North Libertarians receiving awards that night. So kind of excited about that. And then I want to take this opportunity to call for some action from the Johnson County Board of Supervisors. It is my belief, after being silent as a city councilor in North Liberty for a while on the topic of the jail, it is time for the Johnson County Board of Supervisors to move and approve what their duly elected sheriff is asking for. I would also like to request a letter be drafted. Mayor, I'd like you to entertain a letter from yourself and this council supporting Sheriff Kunkel's efforts for getting a new jail built and sending that off to our Johnson County Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Anything else? Why not?
Sorry.
Fire away.
I just want to call everyone's attention to the email that Ryan sent about the Krandic line and the resolution that the Board of Supervisors passed last month, I think, and suggest that maybe we have that on our agenda soon for discussion as they ask for response.
We have it in the works. You'll see it in February. Anything else? I will say two things. Number one, you had a long meeting coming. You've had it pretty easy over the last 12 months. But more seriously, thank you for the time and the effort that you put in, not only here tonight, but in researching this and being prepared for this conversation tonight. Our community benefits greatly from this conversation. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone want to stay longer?